Wow, who paid for the transportation on that?
These guys right there.
Oh,
Did you see it?
No.
No.
Go back, go back.
Strike, right? Is that a company?
All the gum companies.
Strike,
So, wait a minute, sorry, let me do that one more time. StrideGum.com actually is where you can get this if you want to use this for anything. It is downloadable, free of charge, in several resolutions. But when you take a look at the idea for enterprise, where it might go, one of the reasons I wanted to share with you this idea that Matt brought out is because look at the little simple idea that caught on, right? And then look at the networking stuff and look at the people that the idea influenced. You know, what was his objective? I don't know. But look where it went. And that's a key thing about generativity, my friends, and I'm hoping that maybe this becomes an element that you consider anyway for your work with your students. That when you work toward the development of that culture in a generative fashion, what happens is many emergent opportunities become visible. Emergence is a huge thing. All of a sudden, an emergent opportunity spirals out, and you go, wow, that's a direction we never thought about going before. If you can shape your kids in a way that the relaxed alert state is present, and they like being there, they want to be there, they see the purpose of the project, they understand that, then the conversations change into a very generative kind of place. And out of nowhere comes the best idea, or a good idea to pursue. We never really know if it's the best idea. But the idea or the ideas or the processes become free, as opposed to limited by structures and steps that we are all very used to taking. For most adults, it's a little uncomfortable to go there. And it's also uncomfortable for the kids to be a part of it because, as we said earlier, they're not used to being in a condition like that. They're used to being in a veridical environment. Right? So it becomes quite fascinating. Any feedback on this? Anything you want to?
Carl, you have to. There's got to be an environment though where students are not afraid of failure. Obviously, with ideas comes the potential for failure.
Yep.
And somehow there has to be an environment created where if you fail, it's okay.
Yeah. Failure is a big thing because it's threat, right? Failure is personal threat. Could be perceived as threat anyway. And again, we are in a society where failure is. I mean, look, let's go back to the Olympics. You have 3 people on a podium who've just done extraordinary things. Who do we talk to? The gold medalist. Who gets all the camera time? The gold medalist. What about the silver medalists that came 1/100th of a second behind? They're nobody all of a sudden.
Yeah, like the Red Wings who came in second.
Yeah. That damn crossbar. But you see how we focus on the one and only. We are in a society that says it's got to be owned. It's very vertical. It's only the winner.
Carl, with our high school enterprise students, because we have this small working group of young people,
Yeah.
and they build, to piggyback on what you said, Keith, because they build relationships with each other.
Yes.
They're not just a club or whatever.
Yes.
They're actually friends.
Yes.
And as colleagues.
Yes.
So failure, I think that as a small group, failure will not be looked upon so harshly because you know each other. You know what you did to get there. You know what you tried. You
Yes.
saw the steps. Whereas if we're in a big group and you stand up in front of everybody and say,
unfamiliar, right?
that's right, it doesn't know you, it doesn't know all the work you did and the trials you did, and you stood up and you failed, everybody's like, oh, what a waste of my time. But I think in our high school enterprise group, I tell my kids there's no wrong answer, just spit it out. We're all good at everything. We're a thread, we're the fabric of our
It
craft.
comes right back to Earl's question yesterday. How do you do this? Where do you start? How do you go about it? It's what you model. So it comes from your personal philosophy on what do you do in that moment of perceived failure. How is it handled?
You were there when the enterprise team crashed and burned
Yes.
the competition.
Yes.
Okay. Were they able to?
But
I'm in
maybe
the
a
gym helping another
competition
group.
word
But,
Was scary.
well, no, but these kids have put in a lot of time, and what happened is water got into the circuits, and with the chlorine, everything just, and they literally crashed and burned. And for the next week at school, they had to explain to their peers what happened.
He was in another part of the building.
Well, I
so-
found what I observed, and again, this is just from the outside observing in, there was quite a bit of mutual support amongst one another because they knew what they had accomplished. They were just unfortunately in a bad time that it failed right there in front of the whole crowd.
My assessment of that situation, what he's talking about, there was a competition in Alpena, Michigan for teams building these underwater ROVs. His enterprise team, it died on the vine. It was over in minutes. He was in the gym, we were in the pool. They were in the pool. The assessment, the evaluation of what went on from my observation of that was, when it wasn't working from the beginning, it wasn't working, they couldn't get the thing to sink, they couldn't get it to go, they couldn't get it to happen. Their teamwork, their support of one another, and their knowledge of who knew what to do when, I mean, you know, this person went there, that person went there, there wasn't anybody telling them, they just did what they needed to do. When it ultimately didn't function, they came out with smiles on their faces, they were arm in arm, they were supporting one another. That's the kind of education that I see as carrying long beyond whether they got a pin or a trophy or a medal to go home with them or not. And their defense of what happened became a collective defense, not she blew it. And I would imagine that's what was going on. There probably wasn't a lot of finger pointing, or it was her fault or his fault or whatever. And so they as a collective now began to shape the perceptions of others on how they handled it because of the way you led them.
I did not lead it. It just
You did.
No, I did
because
not.
you stayed out of their way.
My point is they had to go back to school though for almost a week and literally, how'd you do? How'd you do? And go and how do I say it? Go through that failure over
Yep.
and over and over and over again.
But what happens, Keith, is so cool is they had to explain by telling their story.
Yeah.
There's so much power in the personal story. So these kids, they were there, they worked hard, they did da-da-da-da-da. It was a cool story.
Yeah.
And they didn't get the
They don't
trophy.
have a story.
The trophy must not have been that big of a deal to them.
And when you say by them continue to explain their failure, they accept failure better in anything they do from now on, and they're not defensive in that area.
Yeah.
I think they have improved. That's an area that they have improved in the long run.
Yeah.
But I'm not so sure everybody can do that.
You're right. It takes a while to develop it. It's not, again, it's not the plug and play, it's not the quick fix. It's a matter of layer upon layer upon layer of opportunity and being sensitive to consciously making that move toward creating that culture that is much like you described.
That's why
Go
it's
ahead.
good for them.
You know, that's like, it really is like, might have failed, but this is a story. This is a cool story, and it's a story of your guts.
Story.
It's a story of your guts, and that makes you cool.
A comment I often make when people say, you know, how do you know if your school's doing very well from an assessment? I want to know what stories the kids are telling their parents when they get home from school. I want to know what they're talking about on the bus. I want to know, there's my assessment of how good our school is. You know, okay, we got this much on an ACT, we have this many AP classes, we have this, we have that. I want to know what they're talking about. I'm getting ready to, in 2 weeks, I'm going to a high school reunion, my 32nd high school reunion, because we're all turning 50 this year. We're having a 32nd reunion. What's amazing are the teachers that we've invited to come who are still alive and coming. And the stories that will be told, and the anxiousness of students to have certain